Without further ado, our staff presentation to the members. This is something we try to do 3 to 4 times a year, just to report out on some of the things we've been working on over the past few months and some things that we're looking forward to coming up. And we thought, what a great opportunity to give the staff some chance to meet and engage with the membership and have it at our AGM. Sean's already done a wonderful acknowledgement. I would just like to reiterate that, yes, we're living and working in the lands of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, the Wasanic peoples, known today as the Tsartlip, the Paukwchin, the Sayout, Sakem, and Malahat nations. We've also started working with the Sauk Nation, which is a really nice and new relationship for us. And we really value these relationships, really value sharing our capacity with these different stewardship teams that are doing really, really wonderful work across the region. We work with over 10 municipalities and in different capacity, as well as the provincial and different departments of the federal government. And many of these municipalities support us, either logistically or in the cases of most of these here, through financial donations and grant and aid, or even as line items supporting programs like education and water quality monitoring, and so on. So thank you to these municipalities and governments for their support. I'd also like to thank DFO. Larry mentioned earlier, we don't pay very much in administration. Our office space is an in-kind from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So thank you to them for that support. There's a number of foundations and partners that support us in our work. These are just some of them, and that's always growing and changing. And so thank you to our partners and funders. As well as the huge and incredibly generous corporate donors and sponsors who, time and time again, support us when we come out asking for different handouts, whether for the online auction or through a corporate sponsorship program. If you're a local business owner and you're listening to this, if your logo's not here, reach out and let's talk. And if it is here, thank you so much for your support. Peninsula Streams, from our humble beginnings up at the north end of the peninsula, growing out and expanding across the region, has had a long history, over 20 years working on the peninsula in Greater Victoria, doing some really wonderful projects. And it's all thanks to, again, the volunteers and the members that put in thousands of hours towards these projects and programs. So as we're talking about all the wonderful things that we've accomplished here and are excited about doing, just keep in the back of mind that it's all on the backs of really dedicated and wonderful volunteers. But that's not to say that staff doesn't do anything, and to an incredible staff hiding in the back there, just a wonderful team of incredibly capable scientists and biologists and educators and administrator whizzes. So I feel so fortunate to have such an incredible team. I really can't wait to see what they've been doing, and yeah, it's Alex. We should hear from most of the people on the screen. One person that you won't hear from is Ian, but I'm sure you'll hear from him anyway. But maybe just a quick plug to Ian in terms of the immense support that he's given the organization in his transition to more of a supportive role. And he's done a fantastic job at just that, and lending an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience of these systems to staff and providing mentorship, continuing to help grow and maintain a lot of the relationships that he's built over the years, and help guide some of these programs. So thank you, Ian. Quick agenda, pretty much just running through the staff and their reports, and hopefully we can wrap up and have time for question and answers. But we're always available to answer questions about anything presented here or more, and love hearing from the community about interests and questions. So with that, I will call up our first presenter, the newest team to Peninsula Streams, joining us from somewhere out east over the Rockies. Allison, always Weber. Yes. Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So I'm Allison. I'm the environmental support technician, and like Kyle said, the newest member of the PSS team. So very excited to be here and excited to meet all of you. But yeah, for some quick overview, I'll just be starting on my background so y'all can get to know a little bit about me. I'll touch on some of the stuff I've been working on since starting in March, and then I'll kind of elaborate a bit on the roles I'll be stepping into in the future. So water quality programming and the Craig Flower Estuary tidal marsh monitoring. So for some background on me, I did my undergrad in biology at the University of Waterloo, which I completed in 2022. I then went on to do my master's in biology, specifically in fish physiology, also at the University of Waterloo, with a research thesis that primarily focused on investigating the impacts of elevated water temperatures from climate change on 3 different species of darters, which are these very colorful little guys that are in the perch family. And then while wrapping up my master's, I began working as a field technician for a University of Waterloo and Department of Fisheries and Oceans partnered project that essentially applied the research question and methodologies of my master's to different fish species at risk across Southern Ontario. So I wrapped all that up last year, and then I moved out here and started working with PSS in beginning of March. But since then, I've been involved in a wide variety of different projects, which has been a really great way to kind of become familiar with the type of work that PSS does. So to name a few, the past couple of weeks, I've been helping Steph out on the Stream to Sea programming, essentially helping classrooms with their salmon fry releasing and teaching the kids a bit about what makes a healthy stream and showing the kids some different inverts that they might find in the streams that their fry will be eating. I've also helped out with a number of beach seines and stream assessments across the peninsula, and then continually helping out with the Colquitts River smolt trap. And some of these you might hear a bit more from other staff later on. So one of the main roles that I'll be stepping into is leading the water quality program. So in addition to running our monthly monitoring that we do across the peninsula, I'll also be looking into ways that we can improve and expand the program. Most notably, what I've recently been researching is ways of incorporating invertebrate surveys into our monthly monitoring. As the different types of inverts and the diversity of bugs you can find in streams can kind of provide a bigger picture on the overall stream health that goes beyond the physical metrics that you would get with just a monthly like water quality test. In addition to that, I've kind of started reviewing, doing an internal review of our current sites and checking in on how they're doing, as well as looking into if there's any additional new sites that we could add to our program. Ultimately, though, I think the end goal here is to find ways to incorporate and input our water quality data to inform other PSS programming, most notably future restoration work for sure. Another one of the projects that I'm also kind of stepping into is monitoring progress of prior restoration work that we've done at the Craig Flower Estuary Tidal Marsh in View Royal Park. So as some of you may know, the non-migratory subspecies of Canada geese there kind of have wreaked havoc on the shorelines, grazing and grubbing down the edges of the banks down to essentially this barren mud that is very vulnerable to erosion. And so in the past, we've introduced this alder and willow fencing to deter the geese from the shoreline. And as well as this past summer, we did some larger restoration work where we dug out this channel to increase inundation area and use the spoils from the channel to create that elevated platform. And both of those were planted. So where I come in is essentially researching how these efforts are doing. So one way that we're doing that is establishing permanent vegetation plots. So essentially setting up a plot in fenced and unfenced regions to kind of compare how the plants are recolonizing these spaces that are protected from the geese, as well as looking at a number of different metrics of soil quality, we'll say. So soil salinity, grain size, pH, how anoxic the soil is between those restored sites. So in the channel and in the elevated platforms, compared with the lower mud flats, to also kind of get a sense of how our restoration efforts are doing in terms of quality and performance. Overall, though, essentially, it's just a little research project to kind of see how our interventions are helping this area recover over time. Ultimately, though, so keeping it short and sweet, the water quality and the marsh monitoring are kind of my leadership areas, but of course, I will be continuing to support all of our other programs as well. So Thank you so much for listening, and I'll pass it off to Chloe.
Okay, thanks, Allison. Super stoked to have you on board. Hi, everyone. I'm Chloe Kramer. I'm the Beach Program Coordinator. I've been with Peninsula Streams for a year now. I started last April, but I've been full-time on the Beach Program since the fall. I'll just be walking through a couple main components of the Beach Program, what we've been working on recently, and then kind of what we have coming up for the summer. The Beach in Beach program is an acronym, stands for Beach Education and Conservation of Habitat. Under this umbrella, we do all sorts of stuff, all focused around community science, community power, providing volunteers, community members, students, First Nations with hands-on experience in collecting scientific data, different types of environmental monitoring, equipping them with the skills and tools and empowering them to take action to protect their local shorelines. Main component of our beach program is our forage fish beach spawning surveys. Forage fish are any of those small schooling fish that form that really critical middle layer of the food chain. So feeding on plankton and passing that energy up to higher trophic levels, sustaining our larger fish like salmon, marine mammals, seabirds, things like that. We would not have the diversity and abundance of life on the coast that we do without forage fish. Our surveys target beach spawners, so surf smelts and Pacific sand lance. These guys are a bit unique from other types of forage fish. Instead of spawning out in open water like herring do, they actually come up onto sand gravel beaches at the high tide and lay their eggs right in the sediment, where they will incubate for a couple weeks to a month. Because these fish utilize shoreline habitats for spawning, does make them particularly vulnerable to shoreline development and pollution. They're also quite elusive and cryptic species. There's not a lot that we know about them kind of on the Canadian side of the Salish Sea. So we're working to help fill some basic knowledge gaps with this data. So our surveys are completely community run. They go year round. We have teams, I think 17 now, spread out from Sydney out to Souk, each equipped with their own kits. They will sample sediment from the upper intertidal zone of beaches, basically lay a transect, scoop a bulk sample, sieve it down, put it through a water vortex system. The heavier sediment stays in the bowl. Any eggs and other sediment that are of similar density drop down onto a screen. Then that sample is then what is analyzed under the microscope in search of eggs. So far for 2025, our community teams have conducted 133 surveys, sampled 4 new beaches, 20 new sites at existing beaches. We've detected surf smelts 71 different times and sand lance 8 times. Zooming out for our program since the beginning, we started these surveys in 2018. We are nearly at 1,400 surveys, which is amazing. Sampled 123 unique beaches across the region for a total of 236 sites. We detected surf smelts 334 times and sand lance 42 times. Thousands of volunteer hours have gone into these surveys, both on the beach collecting as well as the microscope work kind of behind the scenes. So huge thank you and shout out to our community scientists. We would not be able to get this amount of data without you. Just a visual look at our sampling coverage, the map panel on the left there. Those gray dots are our sampling sites for the Saanich Peninsula. At least we do have sites extending out into Souk and beyond as well. The middle panel there is those colored dots are our different positive sites, red being surf smelts, blue being sand lance, and purple being both. This is a really nice tool for identifying like visual hotspots of where we're getting the most amount of spawning, which through 7 years of collecting this data, it's very clear that Sydney North Saanich area, Seaham Harbour particularly, is a really big hotspot for surf smelt spawning. Which leads me into a project we have coming up this fall. Nymph Point Park up in Seaham Harbour is one of our top spawning beaches for surf smelts. We get hits at this beach every single month of the year. A little bit less so in the summer when we see lower spawning for surf smelt overall. But in our peak spawning time through the winter, we can see upwards of thousands of eggs in a single sample, which is amazing. As you can see from the map, it's situated in quite an impacted and urbanized area. Lots of coastal development, which does make this critical habitat at risk. The site has a quite interesting gradient of habitat. At the southwest end, or what we refer to it as the reference site, it's got a nice natural eroding back shore, lots of overhanging mature trees for shade, pretty healthy marine riparian zone as well, and a lot of that suitable spawning sediment. So that nice coarse sand, pea gravel that surf smelt require for spawning. As you move up to the northeast end or the degraded end, there's an armored rock wall that starts halfway through the beach. Lots of invasive species, not much of that overhanging vegetation in those trees, so it's a lot more exposed. There's also a creosote log structure, which up until recently housed a beach derelict sailboat, which you can see in the satellite imagery there. We also see a loss of that suitable spawning sediment. So as you move up to the northeast end, we're losing that coarse sand pea gravel mix, leaving behind really silty clay base, kind of interspersed with larger angular substrate like some oyster cobble and other big rocks. Basically not great for spawning. Our Sydney Forage Fish volunteer team has been double sampling this beach since January. So basically conducting a survey at both the reference and the degraded end as a way to directly compare both egg abundance and survivorship. And the results are as we expected. Our reference end, we're seeing a lot more spawning in terms of abundance, hundreds to thousands of eggs, most of which are alive. And our degraded end seeing far less eggs, sometimes only a dozen, or in April, basically 10 eggs, most of which are dead, likely because they're getting suffocated by that really fine silt and mud. So our restoration efforts for the fall will focus on nourishing that northeast end of the beach, bringing in suitable spawning sediments, doing invasive species removal in the back shore, as well as some marine planting as well. The other part I will touch on for the beach program is our European green crab trapping. If you are not already familiar, European green crab are an invasive species of shore crab native to Europe and North Africa. First brought to North America in the ballast water of ships in the 1800s, they've continued to spread through that ship and gear transport. They were first spotted on the west coast of the island in the 90s in the Clackwood and Barkley Sound areas. Continued to spread, kind of trickle down through the strait and up around the eastern side of the island ever since. Their distribution isn't even. They kind of got localized populations varying in degrees of severity. The worst being in Souk Basin, there's quite a large mature population established there. Other kind of localized detections, Whitty's Lagoon, Esquimalt Lagoon, and then just as of last summer, now in the Gorge Waterway as well. These crabs really wreak havoc on the environment once they grab hold. They're voracious predators. They can completely wipe out their bivalve and invertebrate prey species. They outcompete our native crab and seabird species as well. They're also excavators, so they'll rip up eelgrass beds during feeding as well. And the gorge definitely has lots of eelgrass beds, which are really important habitat for rearing juvenile salmon. The past 2 summers, we've been conducting early detection monitoring, which is essentially picking a site that is conducive to European green crab habitat, but where they actually haven't been found yet, as a means to kind of nip the invasion in the bud before it takes hold. This summer, in response to those green crabs that were found in the gorge, we have a contract with DFO to perform early detection trapping throughout Portage Inlet. So basically, we're going to be sampling once a month from now until September at different sites throughout Portage Inlet to kind of see the extent of the invasion, hoping to answer the question, is the invasion of the crabs just localized at Gorge Creek where they were first spotted? Or have they made it up to Portage Inlet? Is it potentially worse in Portage Inlet? These are all things we're hoping to answer with our trapping. Okay, that's it for me. I could go on forever about all the other stuff we've done with the beach program, but it's hard to squish it in just 10 minutes. Yeah, but thank you. And I believe we've passed.
Okay, hi everybody. So if you don't know me, I'm Austin Nolan. I'm the support biologist with Peninsula Streams. I've been with the team for about 3 years now, a little over 3 years now. And my role is the support biologist. I kind of support other staff in their projects, as well as look after sort of stewardship events and small watershed habitat restoration. Today I'm going to be kind of reviewing what we've been doing over the last few months in terms of stewardship projects, lots of riparian work, and talking about some upcoming restoration plans as well for this summer. So getting started with one of the important watersheds up on the peninsula in central Saanich is Tatayat. Over the last year or so, we've been really busy clearing riparian areas in Tatayat Creek, particularly within the Saanich Historical Artifact Society section of Tatayat. Lots of English ivy essentially growing all over the place. We've been following that up with hundreds of native plantings in the riparian zone. Upcoming early this summer, I'm planning to lay down some nice mulch to help protect and keep moisture retention for these species so they can survive through the summer, as well as some watering. In-stream restoration in this section of Tatayat this summer is going to include post-assisted log structures, or PALs, which I'm going to touch on in just a moment. Riffle constructions, loose woody debris additions, likely cedar stumps or brush bundling. And there's some old bank armoring here that was a past restoration that's failing that I think would be a good idea to remove. It's causing an excessive erosion. So lots of things that can be done by volunteer stewards by hand is kind of the goal. Just quickly talking on PALs. So PALs are something I learned about sort of recently in the last year or so, and they're a form of what we call low-tech process-based restoration. So they're essentially a mixture of woody debris that you wedge into the creek bed using posts. So you kind of flex posts down and clamp things into the creek bed. This directs water around these structures. So this helps dig out pools, scour soft substrates. It's also adding structure to the creek, micro-refugia, places for salmon to hide. More wood in the creek is always a good thing. They can also recruit wood as it heads downstream. They are temporary structures. They're not necessarily going to survive through a atmospheric river per se, but that can be a good thing. They're not going to cause jams or things like that either. These structures are built usually using like a hydraulic or a gas-powered post pounder, or really a lot of muscle. So a lot of volunteer work. But fortunately in the last, in spring, I got a gas-powered post pounder now. So I'm just excited to get volunteer stewards out, and we're going to be starting to throw these structures in. They come up really fast, and you can put in a lot in a really short period of time. And I've seen their effect on Cowichan River, and I've seen them work. They're really a fantastic little way to kind of get into the creek in an easy way, especially in places where you can't access it with a machine to throw big stumps and boulders in. Moving on to another watershed, Millstream here. This year, so we've been focusing on Cedarville Park a lot over the last couple of years with some in-stream restoration and some riparian work. The left bank, which is sort of the more accessible bank that isn't private property, is almost fully clear of invasives at this point. So it's been great. And volunteers have really been the center of that happening. What we've kind of looked at now is focusing more on the lower reaches of Millstream towards the bottom in the sections of Colwood and View Royal. This seems to be where the majority of current spawning habitat is being utilized at this time. So there's some nice deep pools. There's some off-channel areas that would benefit from brush bundles, PALs like I talked about. Brush bundles are usually conifer boughs all bound together. It's a really easy way to add structure to the creek, so you can tie them off to banks. You can throw a cedar block in the creek and tie it off to a cedar block. You can pin them into the banks to collect debris. When you put them in corners, they're on a loose rope, they'll move into the corners to mitigate erosion. So another, easy way to get into a creek with volunteers and build fish habitat. Other activities in the creek would include garbage cleanups. There's lots of garbage in these sections. Invasive species removals, of course, more riparian planting, more likely in the fall riparian planting. We're also looking to install a hydrometric monitoring station in Millstream to monitor flows in the creek and help inform us at what flows salmon are utilizing the multiple fish ladders in Millstream. So if you don't know, there's many fish ladders in Millstream. So seeing at what flows they're utilizing them, when they're utilizing them, and where they're going, how far up they're going. To help kind of inform future restoration, we're going at the end of June, we're going to be completing a habitat assessment of the lower reaches of Millstream. So again, we noticed during snorkel surveys back in December, I think it was December, that most of the spawners activity is low in the system currently. So this assessment will help us look at all the salmon habitat. It's an urban salmonid habitat procedure, or USHP, is a way that it's through a salmon habitat lens to identify these spawning and rearing habitats and help inform some restoration that we'll be doing in the future. Moving on to another watershed up in North Saanich and Sydney, Polsit Creek. Over the spring, we planted 65 new plantings around a section of creek that I restored last summer. These areas beforehand were English ivy, invasive English ivy, of course, which seems to be everywhere. The deeper roots of these native plantings will help in this very flashy flow watershed that has a lot of erosion problems and things like that. So we installed, along with some Sydney Park staff, as well as a restoration of natural systems student, kind of helped me with the planning. We've installed about 110 feet of split rail fencing. So it was kind of a good way for me to learn how to utilize this method. And I'm really excited to do more of this in Polsit Creek, as well as other watersheds, and do it with volunteers. So we can get out there, and this fencing goes up really fast. Believe it or not, the Sydney Park staff sort of left me on my own after we set up initially. And I built that fencing by myself in probably about 2 hours. So with volunteers, of course, we can do a lot. So I think it's a really useful thing. It's going to keep dogs out. It's a good place to have signage and inform people on what's going on. And it's protecting that pool, which is incredibly important summer refugia habitat. That is where I found the vast majority of fish in the summer during the restoration, was in this pool. Other things about Polsit in terms of in-stream restoration for the summer. So we'll be looking at doing some more riffle construction. So those aerating structures made of cobbles and gravels that support spawning beds and aerate the water, and is feeding grounds for our salmonids. We'll also be looking at adding more structure in the form of brush bundles, pals, large rock, things like that. Creating more structure in the creek. Polsit Creek, like most urban creeks, is lacking in structure. These salmon need microrefugia. They need places to hide. So that's sort of the goal. Moving into 1010 Creek, so this is up at the airport. We've been busy, so today Allison and I were in the creek all day doing an assessment, the second day of it, and we're nearly done. We probably have one more day to finish off the assessment. It's another salmon lens assessment, looking at salmon habitat. So that just got finished, but volunteers over the last few months have been crucial in removing invasive species from a past restoration site that just had a little bit of a cleanup needed, of just a few invasives moving in. And then we followed that up by planting over 140 trees already, including alders, and then conifers like our cedars, our Douglas firs, and our hemlocks, which are going to succeed these alder species and help support these banks and create more shade and continue the riparian cycle on. We've also been planning this summer's restoration work, which will be the first of at least a few years of restoration in this watershed. So the lower reaches of this creek within the airport property are currently overgrown with large, dense stands of native willow, but very, very dense, as well as mixed with Himalayan blackberry, the invasive blackberry, which is willow grows into the creek. It encroaches into the creek when it's allowed to grow drastically, and is sort of one of the only species you're seeing. So the entrenchment of this creek, it's in an engineered ravine. So what that means is flow is trying to redirect around these willow clumps, and it's eroding into clay banks, and it's causing basically heavy sedimentation, lots of sedimentation issues and high turbidity. So this is sort of resulting in poorly defined riffle pool sequences. There's limited refuge habitat. There's no deeper pools or summer refugia in this section. Suitable gravel substrates here are either absent altogether or completely covered in sediments, embedded with sediments, I guess I should say. So our plan for this summer is to remove sections of this willow selectively through combinations of an excavator, as well as I'm going to be running a chainsaw. We're going to be ripping willow out of there, not all at once. So you do it sort of in polygon matrix and only take out what's really problematic. And then we're going to be replanting with alder, as well as other suitable species, hopefully some conifers as well. And while we're in there, we're going to do some in-stream structures. So as I've been kind of mentioning before, some riffles, because riffle pool habitats are lacking. suitable substrates are lacking, so we're going to be adding some gravel. And it could definitely do with some more structure in the creek, even some brush bundles to float on the top of these pools and act as shade for these salmon. So lots of little things in 1010. We also noticed higher up, because we did the assessment today, that there's lots of easy places to get some light stewardship activities and throw in these brush bundles, and lots of the pools existing up there that are still functioning well. And just for community stewardship has been a big thing these last few months. We've been in multiple watersheds, removing a lot of invasive species, a lot of ivy for sure. Definitely some ivy pulling pros amongst our volunteer group now, and lots and lots of riparian planting. So we couldn't have done this without the volunteers. So thank you very much to everyone who's been coming out to these events and helping out and making this happen. It's the sheer amount of work that's happened just couldn't happen without our volunteers. So thank you very much to everybody. And yeah, that's it for me. And I will let Steph take over. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name's Stephanie Gurney. And today I'm going to talk about the environmental education programs at PSS and our communications and outreach. So I am very new to Peninsula Streams. I've been working for about 3 months, taking over as education and outreach coordinator from Deb Deacon. So I come from about 8 years of working in the environmental nonprofit sector with the Gorge Waterway Action Society, where I've had roles like their restoration coordinator, their nature house education and outreach coordinator, and act as their director of operations. So I'm still involved very part-time helping with them, where I focused on education programs at the nature house, but also work on facilitating a work experience program, helping young professionals get job skills. So coming on, I've been a long time admirer of the work done by Peninsula Streams. So it's great kind of transitioning into being an informal educator for the K-12 programming, where I've felt very drawn for the last couple of years. So our education program has 6 main offerings, with our streamside education, watershed and salmon education program, shoreline education, creatures of habitat, which is our restoration focus program, rain, drains and gardens, which focuses on rain gardens, and our storm drain marking program that we do in partnership with DFO's Stream to Sea program. So comparatively, we are 5 months into the year, and we have already engaged almost 1,300 students. So I'm hopeful that that number is going to continue to rise. I anticipate perhaps maybe double. As Kyle mentioned, 2024 was a huge year of growth in the education program. So I'm hoping to continue that momentum moving forward, and just kind of working to foster that stewardship and that connection to place in the next generation. Just so for some highlights, shoreline education has been a really big thing we've been focusing on this year. We've reached 190 students so far. The uniqueness of this program is they can be catered to any beach, any program, classes. So we have environmental science classes wanting to come out, or marine biology. So we offer beach seining, beach cleanups, forage fish surveys, and also a crab scavenger hunt. Earlier this year, we were really lucky to have Mavis Underwood from SAOT come and provide some cultural interpretation as part of our beach program down at Agate Beach, which is a traditional Wasanich village site. Mavis was involved in an archaeological project, so shared about that and the fish fence, paired with the beach sailing, it was a really unique experience for those students. So that's something that we're trying to integrate more into our programming. And next week, Chloe and I will be doing a program with Shoreline Middle School, and we'll have Cecilia Dick from Songhees Nation come and provide cultural interpretation at Portage Linear Park as well. So just a really great way of having our partners kind of be brought into our education program as well. Yeah, and then also having our Forge Fish demonstration is always a great thing. And then through that, Christchurch Cathedral School now has their own Forge Fish kit. So they're integrating that into their program and then getting the data back for our beach program. Next, Streamside Education, a really immersive hands-on experience where we're bringing students out to their local streams. So we're including stream habitat and talking about stream habitat for fish, specifically salmon. We do an aquatic bug survey, and we did a lot of assisted fry releases this year in partnership with the Stream to Sea program. So from April to May, we had 2.5 weeks. So we did 25 schools in 11 days, and we had almost 1,000 students. So 940 students in just that small amount of time. It was a great learning opportunity. We were in multiple watersheds, a really unique experience. So the Stream to Sea program, for if you're unfamiliar, is schools raise salmon from eggs to fry, and they get to go streamside and replace. And just a huge shout out to our stream release team down in the corner here. So myself, I had Allison and Chloe assisting me, Jocelyn, the Stream to Sea coordinator, contracted through DFO, and then Kate, Emily, and Grant were our hatchery volunteers. So it was really great working with everyone over that time. Next program feature I wanted to have was our watershed and salmon education program. So this is our 2-part program where we bring the watershed model out to different schools within the watershed. This one in the top corner is the Colquitt's watershed that I've been working with Mount Doug Secondary School. Actually took the revamped model in. The students helped decorate, they labeled the roads, put in the salt marshes, and yeah, the trees and stuff. So just a way that getting the students to take ownership of creating it and then letting them see the program run. And the goal is that I'll arrange going to Campus View and invite the students to help run the program. So it's that peer kind of teaching to help solidify what they're learning. Second is we worked with an island-based artist, Amanda Key, and got a new salmon life cycle poster. So that's going to be a fun addition to the program moving forward. So far, we've hit 110 students. We are running a full day of programming tomorrow with Strawberry Vale for Saanich Biodiversity Days. So those numbers are anticipated to grow in from May to June. Next, I just wanted to give a little shout out to communications. We are spreading the word of the great work we are doing. So we are continuing to have a presence in digital form through our social media. We work weekly at our weekly staff meetings, developing communication strategies for the week ahead, so we know who's kind of going to put what content out when. So we have a plan going forward. Everyone is collaborating on this, and it's a great way of just featuring what we're doing in the community, because as you've seen in our presentations, we're a lot of different places doing a lot of different things. One of the things that I've done in my first 3 months is I work to update our newsletter format, trying to find a way that kind of pays homage to our archive newsletters, makes it really accessible to have on our website, and also sending out on our communication platform. And we're working to do regular callouts for our volunteers, just trying to really get the community involved in the projects that are going on. And then Next, just a feature on some of the community outreach that's happened so far this year and what's coming up next. So as I mentioned, I have a passion for helping young professionals develop job skills. So I went to the UVic Green Career Fair put on by a student organization, a way of trying to gain volunteers. That's really promoting volunteerism as a way of developing job skills, giving you those employable skills. That was great. Belmont High Earth Day Expo was put on by their student leadership group, so that was really great. There was the Queer and Climate Action event that GWAS hosted, a way of showing young professionals kind of career pathways in the environmental world. We have a ton of events coming up for Ocean Week. I think we're slated to attend 6 different events. Looking forward to that. Papakin summer celebration. We're going to be at the Vancouver Island Crab Fest, Heritage Acres Children's Day. So just lots of different things going on, and just really excited to be out there promoting the work we're doing and educating people of all ages in the community. So, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Katrina Adams.
Hey everyone, I am Katrina. I'm the senior aquatic biologist with Peninsula Streams, and I've been working with the organization for 4 years now, which is crazy. I've been leading a lot of the larger restoration projects on the streams, and then most recently working on a cutthroat study, which I'll chat about. So kind of going through some of the work that I've been doing with Sartlip up in Mikowich, and then really narrowing in on the Colquitt's watershed, which has had a lot of work done over the last few years and a lot more to come as well. So Makowich is a piece of land up in Brentwood Bay. So we've got West Saanich here, Mount Newton Crossroad up here. It's about 78 hectares, and this piece of land was returned to Sartlip First Nation in 2020. Beautiful, beautiful land. And we've got Hagen Creek or Quannis that runs through it. There's about 1.5 kilometers of the creek that runs through Makowich. This land has had a long history of agricultural use, so there's some really heavy impacts on the stream. And the stream itself is a really important habitat for coastal cutthroat trout. What's interesting about this system is that there is a sort of a series of large waterfalls right at the inlet where it flows into Saanich Inlet, which prevents fish from coming back. They could leave if they want to, but they can't come back. So we believe it's a really interesting and genetically isolated population of cutthroat trout. We're just working on the DNA to really determine like what the trout population and genetics is looking like, but we're still waiting on the results for that. In the meantime, this creek has, as I mentioned, undergone a lot of heavy impacts from agricultural use. The main thing that we're dealing with is reed canary grass, which is a horrible, horrible invasive species, completely takes over aquatic habitats, slowly infilling the creeks, and we're losing that open water habitat that fish need, as well as many other wildlife as well. So working with Sartlip First Nation, we've partnered and been working on this project over the last 3 years now, or 2 years, I should say, actually. A lot of planning and surveying and figuring out what we should do with, since it's such a large project, there's a lot of creek and a lot of invasive grass. And then this last fall, we did our first big in-stream restoration work. And what this involved was bringing in a big excavator and really digging out that reed canary grass and building new open water habitat, which is great for cutthroat trout and all the other species, waterfowls, big one, amphibians. Everything requires more open water habitat that's not completely destroyed by reed canary grass. So in the September of this year with Sartlip and and Peninsula Streams, we had dug out about 6,000 meters squared of new stream and floodplain habitat. I'll show you a few photos in just a sec. And then over the fall, really planted heavily this new floodplain area to really prevent that grass from coming back. One of the best long-term solutions for Reed Canary grass is shading. So we're really wanted to create heavy, dense native riparian vegetation, quick growing, and they would need to be quite hardy plants because it gets really hot in the summer and floods out in the wintertime. But that's kind of what our main solution was to this grass, along with scraping it off with an excavator as well. So just a few photos of the work that was done in September. This photo here, just kind of right at the start, we dug out a whole new channel to try and reconnect the floodplain with, reconnect the stream with its floodplain, as well as providing more habitat for fish. We added in these big cedar stumps with its roots down that creates really great hiding places for younger juvenile cutthroat. As well as providing perches for birds as well. And then this whole bottom of this new channel was filled with gravel and large cobble, creating great homes or great habitat for cutthroat and amphibians as well. This is kind of looking, so this stump is this stump here. So we created these big alcoves, sort of like what we call boat ramps. Sort of these sloped areas that really allow water to come up to reconnect to that floodplain when there's heavy flows, and then it can flow down as well into the main channel when there's not as much water. And it also prevents fish from getting trapped in certain areas as well. But so essentially this whole area, I think I can show you a great before and after photo here. I'll just go quickly through this here. So this is all just Reed Canary grass, a complete monoculture of grass. There's absolutely no native species. We have a tiny little patch of willow here that we sort of created a cool little island. And then this, I actually just took this today. I was down at the farm and it's night and day. The plants that we put in, about 4,000 plants, 700 volunteer hours getting those in over the fall. And it's unbelievable the amount of wildlife that I'm seeing. I'm seeing cutthroat jumping in that new creek section all the time. Every time I'm down there, I'm seeing them jumping. Birds are nesting. We have a killdeer nesting on our site. Every time I go down there, I see waterfowl on that new open water habitat. It's just amazing to see the difference compared to when it was just that pure monoculture of Reed Canary grass. Just want to go back here. The planting was a huge community effort. So we've got Satin Flower and Streamside Nurseries provided our plants. Mike here is my main partner on this project. He's from Sartleb Stewardship. We've been working together now for those full 2 years. So a lot of work from the two of us in getting this project off the ground. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it tonight, but yeah, he's been a huge part of this project. And yeah, it's been really awesome to work with him on that. And yeah, the volunteers, amazing. We have had volunteers from multiple nations. Pocatchin First Nation has had a huge impact on the project. And as I mentioned, 700 hours, just a few months to get all those plants in the ground. So just what's coming up, we've got a lot more work to do. That was just a small section. I could probably spend my entire career working on this land here. But just a quick update on what we're planning for the summer. So this is kind of an engineered drawing of the restoration plan. So we created this little island here. This was those willows I pointed out. So we have those alcoves, two big alcoves connecting to the stream. So we sort of created a whole new extra channel, and then those big floodplain areas here, that's all been planted. For this summer, we're hoping to complete this whole section of the creek. So we're going to be building another floodplain connection. So one of those alcoves, it'll be a lot bigger than what was drawn here. This was an initial drawing, but re-looking at the site and learning from what we did last year, we're definitely going to expand that. And then as well as building these vernal pools. So vernal pools being that they are filled with water in the wintertime, creating great habitat for amphibians, but they dry out in the summertime, preventing invasive bullfrogs from taking over. And that's the key, is to make sure that you're digging it deep enough that you get that water for the frogs and other amphibians, but that they can still dry out in the summertime. Reed canary grass management, always ongoing. So making sure that in our new planting site, you know, pulling up any grass that's coming out, it's actually looking quite good. Irrigation setup is going to be a big key to ensure that our plantings survive the hot summers. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, continuing that floodplain and stream restoration projects. Moving on to the Colquitts. So I've been working in the Colquitts now since I started. One of my first big restoration projects was in Copley Park, where we restored about 100 meters or so. And then every year, kind of building on those projects, I'm becoming more involved in the design and execution of the projects. And big part of it is working closely with the District of Saanich. We have a really close partnership when it comes to these restoration projects. It's a great opportunity to sort of combine our resources to create these larger projects. So to start off, besides restoration, the other thing that we've been working on is the monitoring, and this has been coming out of our BC SHRIF grant, which gave us that really great long-term grant for 3 years. So having that sort of stable funding over those 3 years have really allowed us to develop this monitoring program, and one of which was running a smolt trap. We started this last spring. We set up a system in the river where we have a fence that crosses the entire river, and it forces all the out-migrating fish down into a trap, which then we go every day to check. Count the fish, measure them to really get a sense of the productivity of the stream, as well as invasive species presence, and just sort of get a general sense of the fish populations, particularly the salmon. Last year we ran it for the first time. It was run quite successful. We had over 4,000 coho smolts. This year has been interesting. We have been seeing extremely low numbers. We're just at 90 coho, whereas at this time last year we're well over 3,000. We're not exactly sure what's happening. I knew it was going to be a bad year. One was that the spawning associated with this year's smolts. So coho spend at least a year in the freshwater. So the fish spawning season, associated with these smolts would have been in 2023. So not this last fall, but the previous one. And I knew that was a really bad year. I went out frequently to all the typical spots where I would see spawning coho. I didn't see a single coho. I saw a bit of evidence of reds or their nests, but I didn't actually see any coho spawning. So I knew it was going to be a bad year just from those visual observations. But this is, yeah, it's very surprising to see how low the numbers are. Some other potential reasons for this, chatting with other biologists who run smolt traps across the island. Timing for coho out migration seems to be a bit weird this year, depending on the system. One could be that it's been such a cool summer. The water temperature has been really, really cool. It could be that they're hanging around a little bit longer, and then as we start seeing warmer temperatures, maybe we'll get another push. Another one, which is quite, hard to see, is mortality from pollutants. This last weekend, we had a big flush of rain, which we hadn't seen in a while, and we saw a few dead coho from what I suspect is from 6-PBD quinone contamination. One of the evidence is seeing coho sort of spinning upside down, swimming. So that's definitely a sign of that 6-PBD contamination. But yeah, it's difficult to know exactly what happened, but there's certainly something going on in the system this year that's giving us these low numbers. Others, of course, is the classic hole. There's potentially holes in the fence. We are constantly monitoring the fence and like plugging up anything that may happen, which we always will lose fish from that. But yeah, this is particularly low. And so we're still trying to figure out what's happening. Still hoping that as we start seeing warming temperatures that we may still get a push come through. For the restoration, so I mentioned Copley Park, which is right here. Copley East Park was my first big introduction to stream restoration in 22. And then over the last few years, we've been working on Gabo Creek, which is a smaller tributary that runs from Riffits Bog into Colquitt's River, just in the Copley Park area. Gabo Creek is a really important habitat for salmon in the way that it provides really slow, calm water and is a refuge for overwintering juvenile salmon. So whereas the Colquitt's River can get quite high flows, Gabo Creek maintains that slower water, which is great for smaller fish. However, Gabo has been having a bit of a rough go. Has a long history of sedimentation, so it has really, really thick sediments that have built up and basically almost infilling the creek. We're really losing that water or deeper water. It also has a lot of pollution. Last year we did a large section of restoration, so we dug out about 200 meters of Gabo Creek, dug out those sediments, replaced it with rock, native rocks, gravels, cobbles. And then as we were digging out those sediments, we really saw how much pollution there was, so much trash. And yeah, it's in desperate need of some love, and started last year. And then this year we're continuing doing the same. Just a few photos of some of the work. Yeah, it's quite a muddy job. Basically like knee above the knee, of just mud essentially that we are digging out, placing it on the banks for planting. So using those native, they are contaminated, but they are actually creating great planting benches, and the plants allow it, prevents those sediments from coming back into the creek. But yeah, digging out the accumulated sediments, replacing it with native rocks, creating riffles, trying to bring in some oxygenation. We built a few spawning platforms, not typically a creek for spawning, but yeah, we were sort of monitoring it over this year to see if we would see any salmon or cutthroat using it for spawning. And then adding in a lot of large wood and boulders to create that in-stream complexity, which salmon need, particularly the younger salmon from predators. These are some of those before photos of the creek section that will be continuing the restoration this year. So we did 200 meters last year. We're going to do the last roughly 200 meters or so where it hits Copley Park or Colquitt's River. So you can see this is about a meter and a half of soft sediment. So that's all coming out. This is going to be a really, really nice big deep pool. Super important for over summering trout and salmon, creating that nice deep water, hopefully cool water. We'll add a lot of more trees around there too, for that summer drought refugia, and a lot more rock and stumps as well. Yeah.
Over winter freezing, I'm looking at your improvement. That would be so much better for cold weather for keeping them alive too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And to finish off, I wanted to chat about one project that I'm really, really excited about. And this is looking at coastal cutthroat trout, particularly sea run cutthroat trout. I've been working on a monitoring project over the last year. What we're looking at for this project and what we're interested in seeing is how sea run cutthroat are using the estuary and freshwater systems. So cutthroat trout, we actually don't know a ton about, as it's not a commercial fish. You know, not a lot of money has been put into studying these fish. So we don't really understand fully like how long they're staying out at sea versus coming into the freshwater. And particularly around our systems here, I'll just quickly go over to this map here. Our study is looking at the gorge as well as the Soup Basin. And so what I'm interested in seeing is like, our cutthroat, sea run cutthroat, are they staying within the gorge system? How are they staying Or are they leaving the system and going out to the more open ocean? Same with the Souk Basin, you know, they have these sort of large enclosed systems. So we're not sure, like, are they leaving it or if they're just staying within those systems? Are they moving in between the different freshwater systems? So, for example, in the gorge, the Craigflower and Colquitts, we don't know if they prefer one or the other, or they go to the same one every time to spawn. There's a lot of unknowns, and the technology that we're using to answer these questions is called acoustic telemetry. So the way we're doing that is we fly fish and we're catching the trout. So we got Zach, our master fly fisherman. That's our new board member. He's been an extremely awesome partner on this. We could not do this project without him and his team. So we catch these large cutthroat and then we tag them. So we're putting a acoustic tag in these fish that have a small little battery in them, and they ping every 2 minutes. At the same time, we set up these receivers. You can see on the hanging off the dock here. And then when a tagged fish swims within 200, 300 meters of that receiver, the receiver gets that signal and gets the tag ID of the fish that was tagged. And from that, we can get a sense of how these fish are moving through these systems.
Was that fish from the gorge?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. We've tagged about 14 cutthroat in the gorge and about 12 in the Souk Basin. The good thing about this technology is actually you can get a lot of data just from a few fish. So you don't need to catch hundreds and hundreds. Just from the 14 that we've had in the gorge, I'm just starting to download all the data. So I don't have the full picture yet. Just working on that in the next month or so. But just from the bit of data that I've gotten, there's some really interesting stories of how these trout are moving. They definitely seem to prefer a few sites over another, like really, really strong signals from certain receivers. And then some crazy movements. So moving from one end of the gorge to the other within a day or so. So there's definitely some interesting stories to be told. And there's a lot of data. I think one of my receivers had about 500,000 pings. So that's a lot of trying to figure out like what is happening here. So as I download all the data over the next month, I'll be sitting down with James Losey from the Wild Salmon Center. He's an expert on cutthroat trout and has done this kind of work for a long time to really get a sense of what's happening with the cutthroat in our system. And then the Souk, we just started tagging there in March, and then over the whole summer, we've been tagging a lot more fish in both the gorge and the Souk as well. So definitely stay tuned as I figure this story out, and I will share it to the public. Yeah, just my last slide here. The red dots represent the installed receivers, and then the orange ones are ones that I hope to install over the next little while to sort of fill in that picture. One potentially being in the Esquimalt Harbor. We have one in the Esquimalt Lagoon, and then kind of like in between the gorge and Souk. Could be really cool if we see some fish moving in between. That's quite a distance for cutthroat trout, but they have been shown to move up to about 40 kilometers as kind of their max distance. But yeah, that would be pretty cool if we can see them moving in between those systems. And I think that is it. Oh, and just one final thank you to Robinson's Fly Shop, so Zach and his team, and then the Coastal Cutthroat Coalition for supporting this project. Certainly could not do this really cool work without their support. Thank you.
Okay, we're at 8:30. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. You've heard a lot from me anyway. We want to do some questions. Maybe I'll just blab for 5 quick minutes, and then we'll get some time in for questions. So that we'll bring the staff up front, and they can answer any questions that you have. We'll also just ask that the board stay behind for the first board member meeting of the year, chaired by Kitty because Sean had to go. So yeah, just some really quick notes on the Rain Gardens for Headwaters program. Recently got a chance to attend the 6PPD Quinone Conference up in Nanaimo. BCCF, the BC Conservation Foundation, and the Vancouver Island University have been doing a lot of work to address this chemical coming off of tires and entering into our waterways, which are very acutely toxic to coho at across life stages. And as we're learning, also to cutthroat at nearly the same sensitivity, coastal cutthroat only, interestingly enough. This is a huge problem, and it's one that we're working to focus on. Luckily, biofiltration, so running the water, stormwater through soil medium with plants is very effective at removing not only 6-PPD quinone, but about 90% of the thousands of chemicals that are found in our stormwater. So we're working with a lot of different partners on building rain gardens, essentially these pieces of green stormwater infrastructure that intercept stormwater, filter it, clean it, and allow it to move slowly and coolly into the streams. We're working with Rush, Anne-Marie Daniels from North Saanich, and university class at UVic on designing also places where we don't have space for a rain garden, filters using recycled materials, circular materials like hair, biochar, oyster, and soil and different materials to build little kind of cellular filters that we can put at the end of storm mains and things like that to filter the water. So we'll be trying some of those and experimenting with some of those and monitoring those throughout the summer and ongoing, depending on funding. Thanks to the Pacific Salmon Foundation, a lot of the work that we've seen here today is supported by them. We also have a sustainability scholar working thanks to a generous contribution by the Powhatan Nation, who've been looking a lot at the stormwater policy as it exists across levels of government. They gave us this really wonderful report that summarizes every stormwater policy from Nanaimo down to Victoria and what each municipality has. So we'll be taking that information and pairing it with the Species Stewardship Center's green bylaw toolkits for stormwater and essentially rating each municipality stormwater policy. And the reason we're doing this is right now, there's some recent legislation that's coming in that's really accelerating development. And what we'd like to do is very much put, we need strong OCPs right now. And we need strong OCPs around sustainable development, including really good stormwater policy. So we want the public to know really well what a good stormwater policy looks like and what the stormwater policy is in their region before the OCPs come out, and then again after, so that we can really leverage our local communities for good policy. The shoreline, we're getting a lot of Steve. We heard from Chloe, we heard from Allison. I don't need to speak too much on this other than that it goes the same for the shorelines as well. And we really want to work and continue to use this data that community scientists are collecting around our shorelines. We have gems of shorelines, really productive ecosystems that are incredibly at risk from development pollution, including 6-PPD and other chemicals impacting the development of these embryos. Every time it rains, it's basically a small oil spill on our coast. So we need really strong protections for our coastlines, and we're going to use the data that you folks are collecting on the beach every day to leverage to do that. So thank you, and hold us accountable to doing that. One thing I wanted to look at in terms of funding resilience and what we've been trying to investigate, in case there's some politicians or local municipal folks in the room, is this natural asset management piece. And in terms of Katrina shared her work that Peninsula Streams has been doing with Saanich. I think that's a wonderful case study as they develop their natural asset planning, and starting to value things like streams as assets for the community and putting a number towards their maintenance and upkeep. That's a really sustainable model, we feel like, and we don't want to be overlooked as community groups. There's so many community groups here that could be pulled into that model. And that would provide a sustainable framework for funding for groups like ours, Indigenous stewardship groups and others, to help upkeep these assets and improve them and make them better. And similar to a line item to fix a pipe that's burst, a stormwater pipe, we should have line items that go towards stewardship groups and communities to upkeep and maintain these natural assets. This is just some stats. We're doing good, but keep coming out. Fundraising was really great. We had a wonderful event, the Smoltz Soiree. Thanks to everybody who was able to participate. I know that the financials were a bit of a barrier for some folks. We'll have a volunteer barbecue for World Rivers Day in September. So stay tuned for that. That's free. Come hang out with us and party. We raised $26,000 through our online auction, thanks to all the contributions from local businesses. We were also able to honor Mary Haig Brown with the Lifetime Achievement Award for her work and dedication to the streams of the peninsula. And that was a really wonderful moment for all of us. Stay tuned. Robinson's is having a wonderful funding event for us on May 27th. They're going to be showing some films. They've also got their hands on some really good Patagonia gear that's going at a really discounted rate, with all proceeds going to Peninsula Streams. So shout out to Robinson's, and please come and suit up in your Patagonia gear and watch some Patagonia films. And you can hear me blab on a little bit at night too. 50/50 raffle is gonna kick up on June 15th and go to that barbecue that we're having on September 28th for World Rivers Day. Happy World Fish Migration Day. This is a plug for our Legacy Foundation. If you have you or someone you know is looking at leaving a legacy to a group, please consider ourselves, either through a direct donation to us or through the Victoria Foundation that manages the Peninsula Streams Fund, so that legacy can become our legacy and live on in perpetuity. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I'll call staff up in case there's any questions. And sorry for so late. Feel free to leave if you're not a board member or stick around for the questions. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. Really appreciate it. So yeah, any questions? I'll try to monitor the chat if you're on the chat online space, but no promises. I know there's lots of cutthroat questions, Colquitt's questions. What's that? You see a chat? Miranda, I might need your help. Up here. Oh yeah, there we go. Just a big Yahoo from Brian Koval, our old friend. Hey, Brian. Yeah, we had some issues before. Yeah, so any questions for staff at all? Yeah, Yates.
I was gonna be pretty now. Is there going to be a way to compare the data on the Hagen Creek cutthroat with the Bilson Creek cutthroat that are also separated off?
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, the question was. Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, Katrina, maybe come over here and answer. Question was, is there going to be a comparison of genetics between the Bilson Creek watershed and the Kiwanis or Hagen Graham watershed, right?
Yeah, yeah, oh, for sure. So as soon as we get results, I think they're, so the BC province, Brendan Anderson is doing the study on the cutthroat, and I think there's a lot coming out on cutthroat over the next year. They've been doing a big assessment of the cutthroat population throughout BC. And so they've done a lot of genetic testing. So a lot of samples have been sent to the province over the last year, including from Bilston, Hagen. We took some from Millstream as well. Haven't seen the results, but as soon as there is some, then yeah, for sure. And we're actually, this is super early, but we're hoping to organize a cutthroat symposium next year, working with Freshwater Fisheries, Sue Pollard. So stay tuned for that, but that should hopefully provide more information for folks on the coolest fish. Yeah.
That's another question. Were you talking about the fish migrating from one end of the, I think it was yesterday, they were
In the gorge?
yeah, in the gorge.
Yep.
Are they following a food source? Is there a fly hatchery happening at that time? Like, insect of some kind, or
Yeah.
when you live up north, you're trying to match your fly to.
For sure.
What's
Zach
happening,
actually
right?
probably be the best one to answer that one.
What are the cutthroat changes, Zach?
Oh, in the gorge specifically?
Yeah.
There's an incredible population of stickleback in there. The state of species have been short striplet proliferating there. The most common would be possum from the really great on those. Sculpin are a huge food source for them too, but also the other species like there's small sandlands. But yeah, it's a lot of stickleback action. Like the beach stains that are done there, Katrina can attest to that. Like there's like 1 trillion of them in each one.
Yeah.
It's insanity. So it's one of the tougher fisheries out there. The reason being is not the cutthroat numbers. There's some big cutthroat numbers in there. It's just the sheer density of forage that's in there for them. They don't have to be opportunistic. It's very selective. It's really cool fishery. It's super neat to be out of that much biodiversity in such an urban climate.
Yeah. And so in terms of the timing, we have to figure that out. So that's what this,
I like what these words selective there, they can be selective.
Yes.
I like gourmet cutthroat.
for sure. Yeah. So in terms of the timing, yeah, well, we're just figuring that out with the study.
All right. Any other questions? Anything in the chat? Don't want to hold people too long. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Really appreciate you coming out, continue the support. And yeah, we're always available for questions offline. And thanks for coming out. Safe travels home.